Nobody knows that I was there. And I hear an officer that just arrived. He says, Letty, come here. I'm going to try to move the gun away from him because he's still gurgling, so we don't know if he's alive. He's like, take a picture. And so I'm getting my camera and I'm trying to put it together. I still think I'm shot. And I'm like, why aren't they seeing that I'm shot? I start putting my camera together and I'm taking pictures, still burning inside, still going, they're going to notice I'm shot right now.
Hey there, my name's Ashley Church.
And I'm Erin West.
We were once newly promoted crime scene and latent print supervisors on mutual struggle buses as we both simultaneously tried to navigate through the challenges within our forensic units.
Now we run a business where we create tools and resources that we wish we had had to make these transitions easier. We like to talk about the experiences we've had in the forensic field, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in the hopes to create awareness around these issues and move the needle forward to create positive change in the forensic community.
So if you're a forensic professional, regardless of your years of experience, who's not afraid to dive into real, raw, and sometimes uncomfortable topics, you're in the right place.
This is the Forensics Unfiltered podcast.
Before we start this episode, our guests would like to share a disclaimer that the opinions shared are their own and not representative of their current or past employment. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Forensics Unfiltered podcast. We are so excited to have you back here with us today. Today we have a very special guest all the way from the West Coast, Miss Letty Ramirez. So thank you for joining us, Miss Letty.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So we have a really interesting topic tonight that we're going to dive into. We've talked about it a little bit in the past on this podcast, but Letty has a really unique perspective, and she's going to share some of her own personal experience with that today, which is really exciting. Before we do that and dive into that topic, Letty, will you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and what you're doing now?
So I have been working for Fullerton Police Department for about 23 years. It's a long time. I was 18, very, very young. And I worked, and when I tell people I've been there 23 years, they're just like, how old are you? I'm like, I started when I was 18. I was a cadet, and then I worked in records, running background checks, and I was a dispatcher, and I was an operator for about 2 to 3 years. And then I worked in investigations, helping out with cases with a translation. I worked with a lot of sex crimes, and that's where like my interest peaked for CSI. And I was going to school to try to get my degree in criminal justice. I wanted to be a police officer, but CSI was just really knocking at my door, and it's something that just intrigued me, from sketching, photography, and having to do a little bit more with the evidence portion of a crime scene versus just arresting. Not that that's bad. I just wanted to do a little bit more, and I started to redirect my studies to crime scene, and I got my certificate from a CSI Academy in LA. And then I went back to school, put myself through photography courses because I fell in love with that aspect of it. And I got a certificate, and then I kind of stayed in touch with Fullerton College. That's where I went back to school. And now I teach there, and I teach CSI courses there currently. And I'm even working on trying to put together a CSI Academy, something similar to what I went to school for in LA. I really enjoy teaching. I also teach detectives through an ICI post course in San Diego, and I teach a day of CSI and teaching detectives in what way are we the eyes of detectives when they're not there. And they really enjoy it. We do a lot of hands-on activities. So I do a lot of teaching. And then anyway, back to the police department. When I got into CSI, it's been now 14 years. I realized that there was just really something wrong with, or missing, not wrong, missing in our crime scene unit. There was no direction. There was a lot of no manuals, no training, no formal training. It just kind of seemed scattered. You went up there and you were just like a property booker. No one really knew what you did or didn't understand our job. And so I just took it upon myself to create something here in our department. And I started to write manuals. I started to reach out to different agencies, figuring out how they did their training. I formalized a training book. I created procedures, SOPs for us. I started to educate officers a lot on what we did because they didn't know what we did. So I held a lot of briefings. I started to train officers.
Very common.
Yeah. I started to train officers to do CSI, and now I train PSR. So I also do that. And then I was a supervisor, promoted finally to supervisor about 4 years ago. And now, like we talked earlier, now we're pushing paper, still working on perfecting my unit, incorporating new procedures, introducing updated technology to our unit. My unit right now consists of 5 forensic specialists, 1 to 2 interns, and I have a reserve officer who helps with, administrative work. They're just not ready to retire. And then I also have about 10 to 15 trained officers that are CSI trained officers. They kind of step in when we call in sick or we're on vacation or I need that extra help. And now we have PSRs, they're kind of like community service officers, and they're trained in taking traffic reports and now CSI, and they only handle CSI at a basic level. So I call it a level 1. So it's like burglaries, vandalisms, simple assaults, and then anything bigger, they'll give us a call. So yeah, that's pretty much my background. That's my unit.
Awesome.
So
it sounds like you came full circle. So
I did.
And it also sounds like you're very well-rounded as far as your knowledge of your department. Only worked in like one place in the department, 1 or 2 places, but it seems like you've worked in a lot of different places. So that's awesome. Okay. So let's dive in, shall we?
Let's do this.
So we had a podcast, it was a while back, but we talked about crime scene safety. And Ashley and I dove into a whole bunch of different things that we've experienced in crime scene safety related stuff, where just, examples of like crime scene tape not being up, not being watched, scenes not being cleared, like a whole variety of issues. She even had a scene where it wasn't cleared and like a suspect was hiding in the closet in the scene while the scene was being processed. So I think a lot of CSIs have stuff like that in common, where there are safety issues at their scenes for a variety of reasons. But when you and I met, you had just a wild story about scene safety. If you would be willing to share it to our listeners, because I think that it's important to hear, and to be careful when you're out there. So if you're open to sharing it, if you'll go ahead and share, and then we'll dive into it a little bit more.
Absolutely. I like to tell the story of how I was in your class, and there's several agencies around, local agencies taking your class, supervisors, and they're talking about scene safety. That's what we're talking about in class. I forgot what agency it was. They were, didn't Orange County have a CSI specialist that was involved in a shooting of some sort with the suspect returned? And then as I'm listening to this, I'm like, there's another CSI in Orange County that was involved in a shooting. I have to know who she is. I got to get in touch with her and start talking about this, sharing some PTSD points or something like that. And they're talking about it. They're like, oh yeah, we used her story to try to get vests in our department. And I'm just like listening. And he goes, yeah. Actually, the specialist was from Fullerton. Oh, Fullerton's here. Letty, what happened to her? And I'm like, huh? Oh, you're talking about me. Oh, that's me. They're like, wait, we thought she they actually even said, I think she quit right after the shooting. Oh, we don't blame her. Like, that was horrible. And I'm going like, what the heck? Why didn't I hear about this story and this girl? And then they're like, Letty, it was a girl from Fullerton. Did you know her? I'm like, me? You're talking about me. That was me. And they were like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, that was me. And I didn't quit. And I'm still here. A little crazy, but I'm still here and still passionate about the job. And they were like, oh my gosh, like, tell us what happened. Yeah. And it was interesting to hear how local agencies were using my story to try to implement like safety procedures and try to get vests into their department.
Girl, I used your story.
Yeah.
When I came back from that training, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm willing to talk about it. I'm good. I've gone through a lot of therapy. It took me a while to be able to talk about it. Actually, there's times where I do get a little nervous or agitated. So if you do see me
Sure.
scratching my neck or something, that does happen, but I work through it as part of therapy. But telling my story actually, I feel helps, and it makes it better every single time. And it's not something that I have to keep to myself anymore. I share it with my colleagues, and who better than people who are out there doing my same job and going through the same things they understand.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us what happened that day.
Oh, what happened that day? So, I mean, I've had calls that I've gone to where suspects did return. So I had seen that happen, but never to this extent. I usually had officers with me, or I just called somebody, which we could talk about a little bit later. But in this instance, it was an assault that occurred in a commercial business. They're selling clothes or something like that. And so it's they called me to this business for an assault that occurred between the boss and an employee. I guess she had to let go of an employee for whatever reason, and he got really upset and started to just beat can I say crap? Yeah. Started to beat the crap out of her. I shouldn't laugh about that. Started to beat her, and pretty bad. So they called me to take her photos. They said, from what I understood from the call, the suspect lived in a nearby city, and he was posting on social media venting about him being fired and how he's just gonna end things. And so we're thinking, okay, he's probably going to commit suicide. Our wonderful, amazing dispatch runs his name, and they find out that there's weapons registered to him. So all our officers are heading out there, SWAT call out. We don't know what we have. So they're going to that nearby agency, and they have me go to the business here in our city to photograph the victim. I respond. Usually at these calls, I'm there by myself. Unless it's something big, I have officers there, but I show up to this business.
So you're there completely alone. Like you don't typically have a sworn officer with you?
I don't. And not in our city. They usually stand by if it's like a bad neighborhood or something like that. But in this instance, it was like a miracle that I actually did have officers standing by. And the reason they were standing by, and I'm so thankful for this other story, the night before I was at a call and I was collecting DNA swabs, and I had like the media there, and I tripped and all my swabs went up in the air. So the officers were all laughing. So they stayed behind just like to shoot the shit with me. Am I able to say that? I don't know.
Yeah.
They're just there to just laugh about it, about the call. They're not there because they had to. They were actually going to clear the call and probably just go.
They're there to tease you.
Yeah, they were there to tease me. They weren't. Everybody was going to that nearby city after the guy. So anyhow, I photographed the victim, and she was pretty bad. And I walk out, and then she's asking one of the officers, there's two officers, asking one of the officers like questions about the report and what happens next, restraining orders, just asking a follow-up questions. And they're outside the business. So this is the business right here. And the officer's standing right here with the victim, and they're talking. This is my CSI truck, and this is a police officer vehicle. And these are just businesses right here. So I hope you like my sketch.
It's a good time.
Yeah. So he's right here. And then the other officer, I'm putting away my camera. So I'm right here at the door. This is me over here. And an officer standing by laughing at me. Love that. I'm so happy he was laughing at me. We could hear activity in the radio, but it's just reference like, oh, the residence is clear, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, I'm facing this direction. The officer's facing this direction, this one right here. Oh, around the corner, the business ends like this. Around the corner, the suspect starts to approach us in this direction. And so he's approaching from my back. And all I see is the officer's face go, and he's saying, he has a gun. And I just turn around. I'm going like, who has a gun? I turn around, and there's a gun pointed at my face. And I turn around, and at that point, I'm in shock. And here's the suspect pointing a gun at me because I'm the closest to his vicinity. And so my officer that's standing with me grabs me from the shoulders, and he pushes me behind him and starts to push me around my CSI truck, this direction. And this officer, love this guy, draws his, where is he? he draws his weapon out and he's directing the suspect, put down the gun, put down the gun. And what I did after my officer pushed me behind him is I ran to this police unit. And see, I told you in my background, and that's why it was important. I wanted to highlight that I was a cadet. In our cadet program, they teach us when we're with officers, if case there's something that goes down, how to release the shotgun and like how to get on the radio and what to say. So that training just kicked in for me. So I ran to the police car and I'm on my radio trying to get on, but I can't because the officers push the emergency button. So it's allowing them to talk, not me. So I can't talk. And then I just started to go, okay, I have to release the shotgun. And I look out the window and I'm hearing the officer give commands. And this happened like for me in slow motion, but it was actually quick. The officer's telling him put down the gun and he's not. Next thing you know, you hear shots fired. And somehow, because of my brain still remembers the gun pointing at me, I think I'm shot. I remember feeling burning inside. I'm going, well, because everything was so fast, I think I'm shot. And I'm going like, okay, I remember feeling this burning sensation, but still trying to call for help. And at the same time, it's just like telling you, your brain goes in different directions. My brain is thinking, okay, I'm going to have to release the shotgun. And if someone's shot, I have to shoot. I just have to shoot. And, you know, and I hear the victims running into the business screaming and my officers just shouting out commands and they say he's down. I remember trying to open the police door. And then so the minute I look up, I see my officers like approaching the suspect. I start to kind of like walk towards that, but behind, so I go from here, start to go this way. And they approach him. And next thing you know, because they hit red, the officers, I don't know how quick, they were already returning back to our city because they hadn't found the suspect at his house. Everybody was there in seconds. So everybody, I have a whole bunch of officers now surrounding this area. Nobody knows that I was there.
What happened?
Nobody knows. And I still think I'm shot. And so the officers, I remember like everybody pulled in and they start taking, I see the suspect on the floor and he's like, I'm just watching him and he's bleeding out. And I can't stop staring at him. I've seen a lot of dead bodies, but I've never seen someone actually die. And I'm just shocked. I'm just staring at him. I still feel like I'm still behind my CSI truck, but I'm watching him just like kind of like gurgling. So the officers, the minute the sergeant and all the other officers showed up, they're pulling my officers that were with me away. They're taking them back to the station. They're just separating them. But nobody has seen
doing
me.
It for you. Yeah.
Nobody knows that I was there. And I hear an officer that just arrived. He says, Letty, come here. I'm going to try to move the gun away from him because he's still gurgling, so I don't know if he's alive. He's like, take a picture. And so I'm getting my camera and I'm trying to put it together. I still think I'm shot. And I'm like, why aren't they seeing that I'm shot? I start putting my camera together and I'm taking pictures, still burning inside, still going, okay, they're going to notice I'm shot right now. Like, I don't know, my brain was thinking. And I take pictures of him and then they asked me to get a gun box. So I go back to behind my CSI truck. We have little doors, compartments, and I'm opening them and I'm trying to put together a gun box. And this is really fast.
You're probably shaking like a leaf.
I am.
Too,
And I
put together a gun box.
Yeah. And you know how many times we put gun boxes together? Like, I just can't. I'm like trying to put it together and I can't. And one of my sergeants comes up to me and he's like, I guess he's been calling me. He's like, Letty. And then I stop and I look at him and I'm like shaking. And he's like, are you okay? And I look at him, I go, am I shot? Am I bleeding? And he's like, wait, stop. Were you here? And I'm like, yeah, he tried to kill me. And he's like, wait, stop. We didn't know you were here. We're so sorry. And they're calling, my best friend is a police officer. She's on duty. They're calling her like, get your butt here now. You need to come get Letty. Yeah. She's having a crisis. And I remember her showing up and they're just sitting with me and they're talking to me. And I just hear wah, wah, wah. I still think I'm bleeding. I'm like, are you sure I'm not bleeding? I haven't been shot. They're like, no. And I'm like still feeling like trying to find this wound. I'm thinking, because I don't have kids and I want to have kids, and I don't know, I haven't said goodbye to my mom. I'm thinking all of these thoughts,
Yeah.
and it's just like my brain did a little mishmash. And they take me away. The minute I see my best friend, I start to I'm holding it together. I'm walking down the car, and all the officers are looking at me, and I'm like, I will not cry in front of them. I will not cry in front of them. I'm like one of the boys, right?
Good for you. I don't know if I could have held it together.
But I don't even know how I made it to her car, but I got in her car. I'm like, drive away. She starts driving away, and I start to cry, and I'm like unconsolable. They bring me back to the station, and they have me in my office by myself for a long time. And finally, the agency that was called in to process came in to take photos of me. And it happens to be one of your very own, Lindsay. It wasn't until your class, or I don't know, it wasn't until a little bit before we took your class that I realized it was her. I all along, because I don't remember, but she remembers even processing me and taking my photos. And she said she even gave me a hug, and I was like, so you didn't look okay? And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you.
Okay.
I wasn't okay. Yeah, so that was like that day, and it really impacted like my entire life. Till this day, like
Sure.
I get triggered with certain things, but when I came back, like I couldn't go back. I couldn't download my photos. I couldn't type my report. It was my Friday. So I went home, and they're like, do you need to take a day off? I'm like, nope. Because when they came, I wasn't crying anymore. I'm good, right? Because I'm one of the boys.
Yeah.
I don't cry. My officers are not crying, so I'm not going to cry. So I'm fine. No, I don't need a day off. I'm good. And I go home that weekend. I'm not okay, but I show up to work Monday. They're like, oh, we need you to download your photos, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's not going to happen. I'm not ready to do that. I'm here, but I'm not ready to do that. And then they're like, okay, well, that's fine. And then they're trying to send me to a call, and I can't get on the CSI truck. I can't get on. I'm like having anxiety. And then they're like, okay, something's wrong with Letty. They're like, okay, that's fine. And I'm so thankful for my department, because I mean, it was, I guess, different for them, something that they hadn't dealt with, like having a civilian.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And they know me, because I've been there since I was 18. They know who I am, and they were seeing this change of behavior. I'm not noticing it, because to me, I'm just holding everything in, and I'm showing them that I am not a victim. I'm not a victim. I am one of the boys. Like, I'm law enforcement. Like, it's like this shield that I'm trying to have in front of me, and for them to not see that inside, I was like losing it. But after that, they kind of said, okay, take your time with the photos. And then that same week, like the week after, for some reason, I sprained my ankle. So here's the intense part. Okay. This is where I started to portray like signs of PTSD. And I'm going to briefing. I sprained my ankle for some reason. And I'm in briefing. The officers, again, making fun of Letty, because that's what we do. And it's fun. It's funny.
Yeah,
but
sure.
this time, I don't think it's funny. I'm in briefing with a bunch of officers. So I just get up and I flip everyone off. I said, and fuck you, and fuck you, and fuck you too. And they were like, what? And this is Letty, who does not curse.
Yeah.
I'm just like, and they're like, what is going on? And I step out, and one of my lieutenants, he's like, go to your office. Like, I think you need some time by yourself. And I'm like, I'm going to get rid of, I don't even care. I want to quit right now. And there's just a lot of thoughts going to my brain, like thinking like I wasn't protected. And it's just, I'm not myself. And my sergeant that was in charge of me at that time, he calls me into the watch commander's office. I'm ready to quit. I'm ready. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm realizing that there's something wrong, and I can't. So I go into the office, and he's like, what's going on with you? And I'm like, again, cursing, like, I don't fucking care. I'm like, I fucking quit. This place it's going to kill me. I was shot, but then I wasn't shot. I'm just like venting. And he's like, he finally has to get to my level. And he's like, Letty, she's like, can I curse?
Yeah.
Because it's like, Letty, shut the fuck up and sit down. And I'm like, Okay, yes, sir. He's all, you don't fucking quit. He's like, you're gonna go see a fucking psychologist. I'm like, a psychologist? Who do you think, that I'm crazy? He's like, he's like, you're just plain symptoms of PTSD. And I'm like, I wasn't in the military. What the fuck are you saying? And he's just like, shut the fuck up.
I
and
love
I'm like,
that you guys had this whole conversation yelling back at him.
yes,
Like,
and
you're gonna get some help.
yeah, and I was like, I'm not driving myself. He's like, no. He's like, sergeant's gonna drive you. He's like, you don't have a choice.
I'm gonna drive you.
And they did. They literally made me go with a sergeant, the one that had approached me when I was trying to put the box together. He was my mentor when I was a cadet, so they knew he was close to me, and they had him drive me to see a psychologist. And I was like adamant the entire time, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know. I already quit. I don't know why you guys have me here. I don't know what you guys are trying to do, trying to fix me. I wasn't in the military. I don't have PTSD. I'm not an officer. I'm still trying to like fight this. And they're like, Letty, do you not realize you're not being your sweet self? Like, who are you? He's like, you flipped off everybody in briefing. He's like, you're displaying. He's like, you don't want to get in your CSI truck. You don't want to download your photos. There's something wrong with you. Anyhow,
I would guess at this point that you're glad that they did that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm still here. Yeah. And when I got there and I started to get help, started with the psychologist, and then had a few sessions with him. And it really made me aware that PTSD is not just for someone that's military background, that PTSD can happen to anyone. It's just, and gave me an understanding of what it was, and realizing, oh my gosh, that's what I'm experiencing. There was just so much anger that I had towards the suspect for returning, thinking he threatened my life, anger towards the department, thinking they didn't give me a vest from the get-go, therefore they never cared about my life, thinking I can't do this, but I have to make face and show my colleagues that I'm tough, but maybe I feel I'm breaking, so maybe I have to quit. So they never see that. And I don't know, there's just a lot of thoughts going on going through my head, and really that helped me. And during that time, we were starting a peer support group, and there was a therapist that was leading it. So she came in and started to help me afterwards. And now she's 7-8 years later, she's still my therapist. Like, I've never stopped seeing her. And she really, I mean, I've gone through something called EMDR, just a lot of stuff. Yeah. To try to get past this, because sometimes here and there I get triggered. But thanks to my department.
I imagine it would be very scary to go out on scenes, especially like, I'm interested, we'll get into this in a minute. I'm interested to hear what's changed since that happened, because I would think they probably wouldn't send you guys out alone anymore after that, but maybe they still do. I don't know.
we still do, but not, there's now procedures and protocols that we follow to get to that. But yeah, I mean, like, my mental health is good now. I don't think you ever really overcome PTSD. I think you just learn to live with it and how to put it in a place of healing and to have a different perspective. And for me, the reasoning, like, why I experienced this was for me to bring awareness, is the way I see it. To bring awareness to the dangers of my job, and to share my story. What does it benefit, me, or experiencing this situation, if I can't share it, and maybe other of my colleagues from other cities and even my own department can learn from that and improve their procedures and protocols to prevent this from happening again. I mean, we can never know when a suspect's going to return, but things have changed. So yeah, like I said, I still see a therapist. I was able to eventually go back to download my photos and type my report. My department really stood beside me, so I am forever loyal and grateful to my department for that. They didn't fire me. They didn't write me up. They share my story as a joke now, and I became the mascot of peer support. But they stood by me, and they pushed me to get help, and they normalized what I was going through. A lot of officers stepped up and started to talk to me. It kind of, what I say, gave me street cred with the officer. Yeah. So they started to tell me their experiences, and realizing that they were also holding it in. I got really close to those two officers that stayed behind. They received an award for their amazing,
Life-saving,
they got a life-saving award. They are now retired, but I am close to them and I'm forever grateful that they stayed behind. And I use it now as training, my experience as training, for training purposes. So I'm still good. I became the supervisor.
Yeah.
I'm a survivor.
So let's talk about that. I
Yeah.
mean, so now you have a team of civilians that are going out there, going out to some of these calls, obviously still alone. You said the agencies put some kind of protocol in place for officers to be out there with you, but obviously that's still not on every case. So what do you talk to your people about, or what would you suggest for, all the other civilians that are watching as far as like some safety measures for, being on scene?
Yeah. Well, the first was we got vests. So finally we got vests. It's optional. They made it optional, but we have vests. So that was the first thing that changed. And then second was really, this is where communication is key. It's training officers, training dispatch, training our own civilian personnel, no matter what unit they're in, how to respond to calls, what to be aware of, and how to practice verbal judo. That's big. Obviously, it's for different things. Like if a suspect's there without a weapon, you can use verbal judo, but with a weapon, how to act. What we train our cadets, it shouldn't just stop at our cadets. It should stop at all civilian staff. If you're out with an officer, how to release a shotgun, how to ask if they don't practice, if they normally don't use the radio, how to use it, and what kind of information dispatch is going to need. So those are two big factors that I now push for, and I would recommend other units to do.
The vest is a great thing to talk about. So I had told Letty that I've worked for departments where we were issued vests, and I've worked for departments where we weren't issued vests. And right before I met Letty, I was going back and forth with my captain about trying to get my girls vests because they wouldn't issue them vests. And one of the things that he asked me was, have I actually ever known any CSIs that have been shot on a scene? And I didn't. I was like, no. I was like, I'm sure that there are. Like, I've heard about CSIs like being shot and whatever. I'm like, but I didn't have. And he was definitely a stats guy. I didn't have like data to back it up, so I couldn't really make the argument. And then I met Letty like 2 weeks later, and then also in that class there was someone else. There were two people in that class. If you remember, I think Mark was in that class too, wasn't he? So there were two people in that class that had been like either shot at or had a gun pointed at them at a scene, which was wild because I was like, here it was. I had never actually met anyone in person. And then we came here, which we have vests now. So
it's because it happens in California only. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I highly doubt it. We're in Florida. We have some crazy things happening in Florida. So, but I think if that is something that agencies are obviously using this story for to help increase the safety in their own departments, I think that's so huge. So you're changing the world, girl.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm trying, and it's just like continual like training, even because you get new personnel, so you get new dispatchers, new officers, and they don't know. So maybe like officers from my era, when that happened, they're retired, they're gone. We have new officers. They don't know Letty was involved in a shooting. So they're out on calls and they're just, CSI, they're fine. They're just going to like non-emergency calls, but it's like, no. So I make it a point to have these briefings with our officers where we cover not only like evidence updates, but we also cover scene safety outside of wearing PPE and evidence and all that. It's scene safety, and I share my story over and over. And every time it's like, oh, whoa, really? It's like, God, I've told my story to my agency at least 20 times, but you have new officers, and it makes it real for them. It's like, wow, okay, so our own CSI was involved in this. And then, so it's training the officers, it's having this continual like debrief with them and updated training. Also dispatch, letting them know like, okay, if for officers to communicate to dispatch if there's an outstanding suspect, If there's an outstanding suspect, dispatch now, they document it on the call. And when they have it, they call CSI to give us our call. They have to let us know if the suspect's outstanding or in custody, or, I mean, even if it doesn't apply to whatever it is we need to do, they have to let us know that. If the officers and the protocols, if the officers are busy and they have to clear the call, even if it's a residential burglary, even if it's a vandalism, but there's a suspect outstanding, when CSI gets dispatched, they whether return or that we have another officer stand by with CSI. Only for those calls where, like, again, a suspect is outstanding.
The suspects at large, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know too. I think we have probably a lot of listeners that heard your story and was like, "Oh hell no, I would have quit the next day." So, which you were up in there like, forget this, I'm out of here, whatever. They didn't let you quit.
They wouldn't let me quit. I tried.
Yeah. But I think, so, we probably have a lot of people listening that haven't been through something quite like this, but obviously part of this job is just being exposed to like regular trauma, like disgusting things, traumatic things, gross things all the time. No sleep, no food, no, whatever. And so we probably have a lot more people in the field that are impacted by that in some kind of way than they even realize. And I think a lot of us have exactly what you have, that like we got to be tough, we got to put our big girl pants on and just keep pushing through, because nobody's going to see me cry. I'm going to shove these emotions down and just keep going. So for those people, that have gotten to that point where they are really feeling like, they've seen something bad, it keeps popping up over and over again, it's impacting other things, like, would you, recommend, like, obviously you were forced into some of that, but I think in the long run, it's turned out well for you. So like, what would you say for those people that, some of those tools and stuff, you feel like they're beneficial?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, therapy saved my life, because I was going downhill, and I thought I was shot for a few minutes, and that's big. I live with this thought of what could have been, what if, and in every call that I go to and things I experience, it always kind of links back, and I always go to what worked for me then, which was therapy. That's why I told you I've seen my therapist for a long time, so I highly recommend that. I'm very happy with what direction a lot of departments have moved towards peer support, to have that. And so I'm involved in peer support, and so I encourage my people to go whenever there's a big major call, whether it be like a baby death, anything, any type of shooting. We have these debriefs for the purpose of peer support. And I have had other calls that were very traumatic, involving children, and just me sharing my perspective helped a dispatch that maybe dealt with the phone call and wasn't able to see it, but they kind of lived with that and they never had closure.
Yeah.
But seeing my perspective, helped that dispatcher. So I make my people attend these debriefs. And if they don't attend for some reason because they're busy, I'll sit down and talk to them. And we try to normalize the fact that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay. You don't have to cry if you don't want. And sometimes I started to learn with my people who is more likely to go to these debriefs and share the stories. But I also have those two specialists who don't want to do that, and I have to have one-on-one like talks with them. I just check in with them. I call it a check-in. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? That call was pretty intense. How do you feel? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. And I start to just ask questions to try to see if they'll say anything. And usually I have been able to get more from them, from like my initial contact. No, I'm fine.
Private side.
Yeah. So I think like, for supervisors, I recommend checking in on your people and suggesting, hey, therapy is like normalizing it, because it's something big in today's world. It's everybody has feelings, and it's okay to have them, that you still can do the job and it's okay, and still talk about it and still be sad about it. It's not normal to go to all these calls and see dead people. It's not normal. It's not, I don't know what to say normal. It's not something I guess we were meant to do. We just kind of fell into this job. So it's to say, okay, it's not normal. So you're seeing a lot of dead bodies. Are you okay? Are you having any issues? And so I kind of like learned to study my people and try to figure out, who I could push to certain directions, and to see like it's not just about me, and talking about it with my people when I have my briefings with my people, our meetings, saying, okay, maybe you don't see a need in debriefs to share your story, but it could impact a dispatcher. Or I've had a chaplain who attended one of the debriefs for a child death that I was involved in, and he said how like it was very traumatic for him because he was helping everybody else and he went to the call. Hearing my perspective, like it brought closure to him. So sometimes just sharing our perspective, you know, and talking about it, and not just pretending like that call didn't just happen. Like we didn't just go to a call where our officer got shot and here we are today, you know, going to vandalism. It's not normal. So to just talk about it. So I feel like that's something I would recommend. It's not, you know, if they don't want to see a therapist, fine, but they can talk to you, call it a check-in, and maybe share ideas of like how to overcome it, or if they are in that situation, what they can do for future. And
I love that. And actually, this is a good segue to the summit, because you talk a little bit about this in your summit presentation too. Yeah. So if you guys want to hear a little bit more about just communication and leadership, and Letty talks quite a bit about how she communicates with her team and gets her team on board with things and her chain of command and stuff like that in her presentation at the 2023 Forensic Supervisor Success Summit. So join us there and check it out. It's right around the corner. By the time this podcast comes out, it might be past, so you'll have to go back and listen to it. But that's a good presentation as well if you want some more information on that. But I really love that. I do think that we are starting to embrace that more as a field, of being like, it is okay to have feelings and, you know, have bad days and talk about it. You don't have to shove it all down and, you know, put your big girl pants on and just tough it out. But I do think that comes from us as leaders being the model for that.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Showing our team that it's okay to be that way, that you can still do this job and still be upset about some of the things that you see when you're, you know, and that you have to deal with when you're out there. So I love that. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. This is therapy. I'm talking about it. This is therapy. So it's helping me.
I love it. So if they wanted to reach out to you to talk to you a little bit more, do you have a contact you'd be willing to share that they could reach out to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
My email, L Ramirez. So it's my first letter of my first name, Letty, L, and then Ramirez, Ramirez, at fullertonpd.org. Or they can call my desk line, 714, that's the area code, and 773-5702. And I love to talk. So whenever they want to reach out and talk about it, I'm here.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Letty. Thank you for sharing all of your stuff today. So join us at the summit. You can see some more of Letty there. We'll drop her information below in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And that's it for our episode today. We can't wait to see you at the next Forensic Unfiltered podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to Forensics Unfiltered. If you liked this episode, would you do us a favor and leave a review letting us know specifically what you liked about this topic? It will only take a minute, but it will really help us plan future episodes so we can bring you more topics that you want to listen to. We'll be sure to provide any links from today's episode in our show notes on our website. Head to www.gapscience.com. Until next time, stay safe out there.